Happy Sunday, everybody. As Dino is the fantasy guru. Welcome to the stream. We will get started shortly. Happy Sunday, everybody. This is Dino, fantasy guru. It's your boy. You're back. It is Sunday. Sunday. It is week 10 of the NFL and fantasy season. Hope everybody's doing okay. We finally got some cold weather here in the Midwest. Great day for some chili. I made with a pot of that shit later. But today's stream is open format, as I mentioned on the last stream. We're just going to review the games for today's slate and talk about any notable injuries or depth chart changes and whatnot. We did have the trade deadline coming up this weekend. There was some notable changes. In my opinion, the best deal that took place was Rashid Shaheed going to the Seattle Seahawks. Uh, that was a fantastic deal. And I know a lot of you fantasy owners are concerned about JSN. The thing about Shaheed is he is a deep threat. He will open up even more room for JSN to work. Not that JSN doesn't run good routes. He's more of an underneath receiver with an occasional deep route. Shaheed is one of the fastest players in the league. Hence, adding another weapon for Sam Darnold to increase his already high-powered offense this season. Who saw that shit coming? I certainly did. But I am pleased as I have many shares of JSN. I will say the egg of the week, and this is part of my anger with the NFL, and I'm sure most of you watched the game Thursday night. I hope you didn't. I hope you didn't waste 4.5 hours watching that bullshit. But the Raiders, for some odd reason, thought it would be best to not throw Brock Bowers the ball after he just had a career high 3 touchdowns, 12 receptions, 122 yards. although in a losing effort, that wasn't his fault. But to come out and target Brock Bowers one, two, three times for an entire game that you lost by 3 points is inexcusable. And I know I'm known for hot takes, but I've been saying it since the Raiders hired old Petey Wheatro. I believe the game has passed them by. That was a terrible hire, and the Raiders are actually worse than they were last year, if you can believe that. They're actually worse. Uh, Gino was also a bad trade. Um, a lot of people, in my opinion, feel like Shedeur Sanders could do exactly what Gino is doing right now, if not better, because he has the ability to use his legs. He doesn't stand there like a statue and just holds the ball waiting for the receiver to get open. So that I'm off my soapbox on that. That did irritate me. I'm sure it irritated a lot of people. If you're in the chat, put your start sit questions, and I will try to give you my best possible answer to help you make these last minute decisions. We're about 50 minutes away from kickoff for the Sunday slate. I know the game opener in Germany is well into the fourth quarter. Check the score. I believe the Falcons are actually beating the Colts, which leads me to my next question. Is this the swan song for Indiana Jones as he come crashing back to earth? This will be 2 bad games in a row. It'll be similar to what Sam Darnold did last year with the Vikings. Red hot through the season, and probably around week 15 started to tail off, and he never really recovered. So I believe the book is out. So I don't know how this game is going to end. It will be a terrible loss to the Falcons. Yes, the Falcons have a pretty good secondary, but they don't have linebackers and whatnot. They're not very strong. And Penix is hot and cold. First time going overseas for a game. Looking at all that, you should be head and shoulders above the Falcons, but Falcons are hanging around. And as you know, when teams hang around, you could take that L. So we'll wait for that game to conclude. I will give you that score live when it happens. Actually, let me go ahead and pull that game up and see what's going on. Got stuff all over the place. But anywho, I will put the link in the chat if you want to join the conversation. Like I said, this is open format today. It's a chilly Sunday. It's week 10. We are passed by the gate of God. For those who made it out alive, congratulations. You still have a full, healthy roster. Injuries has been a thing this year. I'm trying to find it. Put that in the chat for you guys. You want to jump in? There. Oh. And there is the link to join the conversation. So before we hit the Sunday slate, there's another thing that I do want to mention. Or at least a short. Jake Nichols. And what I said in the short, you have to see it. I believe that we have seen the best Jake Nichols. I don't believe he puts up numbers anywhere near what he did in the rookie season. 2 reasons. Number one, his offensive coordinator. And Cliff Kingsbury will have a run of 3 or 4 or 5 games where he's lights out, right? And defenses adjust, and then he has no counter adjustment to what the defenses are doing. And the offense just died. We've seen it in Arizona, and the same thing is here what would happen in Washington. The second reason I believe that Jake has seen his best days. His stature. Jaden Daniels is probably about 180 pounds soaking wet. Um, his body is just not going to hold it. I thought he was frail when he came into the league, but I said, well, let's see what he does. He did well that first year. He didn't really take a lot of big hits. But this year, his body is completely failing. He's been injured 3 times, and we're just starting week 10. There's 8 more weeks to go plus the playoffs, and I don't believe they make the playoffs this year. The Commanders have come crashing back to earth. Tutty gave his 3 strikes, and he's lost 2 of them this year. He's down to 1 strike. Tutty's down to 1 strike. If you don't know who Tutty is, that is the Commanders mascot. And I think that is like the most hilarious mascot in the NFL currently. And I have dubbed Commanders Tutty. They are now the Commanders again. And we'll see. I don't know how long he's going to be out. Jake Daniels it is, but like I said, I don't think his body's going to hold up for a whole season. I don't think he actually makes it through the full season unless they put him on some kind of play program. He's going to need some muscle because his body is just too small and can't handle the hits. But that's my 2 cents on that. So let's actually make this a little bit. Check out the Sunday stuff. So as you know, we did. So as you can see, obviously the Vegas Raiders lost to Denver on Thursday by a field goal. In a game that pretty much should have won. Their defense played their ass off. I'm surprised there wasn't more activity in the post game, just like the post game for the man, my brain's all over the place. The Bengals, who tricked off a win, and they scored over 40 points against the Bears, and still found a way to lose the game. I think we could see something like that happen with the Raiders if this continues with their offense. The defense has been playing pretty well the last few weeks. So they really need to get it together quickly. But like I said, we got the Colts playing the Falcons over in Berlin. And that game is well into the 4th. It should be wrapping pretty soon. I'll get you a score once that is concluded. We have the Giants going to Chicago. Now, I'm in St. Louis, and it's going to be shit. So, the Windy Cities, you already know. If you have wide receivers going in that game, I will temper expectations. You probably want to play tight ends because it's going to be a lot of short passes. There won't be deep passes, I don't believe, in that game. So, Johnson, the tight end from New York, passing guard is going to run the shit time. I don't believe he passes more than 20 times. DeAndre Swift should be back in the backfield, but Monaghan is pulling a Dowdle right now, and I'm worried because I actually pulled off a trade for DeAndre Swift 2 weeks ago for Michael Pittman, which was a very, very even trade, and it helped both teams. But I think that might end up being a time shift. Swift has got the growing problem, and Monaghan is well last game. But again, that's one game. You look for consistency here in fantasy. You look for consistency. If he comes out again and has another good game, that is going to turn into a time shift, which we all hate. We like bell cow situations. DeAndre Swift, one of the few backs in the league that had the lion's share of carries. So, not going to pick winners and losers. I'm just going to hit notable things in fantasy. This is a fantasy. I know I kind of drift away from it sometimes because I am a fan of football. Although I'm frustrated this much, this often, and disheartened fan, still a fan. Nonetheless, next game we have the Dolphins and the Bills. This could be a massacre after Halloween. Does Mike McDaniels get the axe after this game? Like, what was the point of firing the team? See, crack off going on the fantasy. But this kind of does have some fantasy there. relevant. Uh, they're stuck with radio, aka Tua. Tyreek's out. Waddle is kind of out there by himself in aging. Um, Dolphins did have a fire sale during the trade deadline. They not traded away uh, Jaden Phillips, the draft picks. So I don't understand the purpose of not trying to move other players and just kind of you just need to blow that thing up. The owner somehow believes they still have a good roster. Sounds like the blinded owner of the Jets still believes he has a good roster. Although the Jets did have a fire sale as well, they got rid of the best two defenders, and you hired a head coach who's a D coordinator, and you trade his. Can we say the Jets are like could possibly be the worst organization in all of major sports? Can we just say that now? I'm just saying. Like I don't know. I think I could do a better job at this point. Running that franchise. Anywho, B More got Lamar Jackson last week. They traveled to Minnesota with JJ McCarthy at the helm. Um, for those of you that was worried about that, I think you'll be fine. The problem with the Vikings is I'm not quite sure how often they're going to pass with McCarthy. Obviously, with Darnold, it was more of an open offense. But with McCarthy, he uses his legs more. Darnold never. McCarthy is similar to Jackson Dart. So he does tuck it and run quite a bit. So that's going to hamper some of those receivers' numbers, aka Addison and Justin Jefferson. I do have plenty of shares of Jordan Addison. Um, and I was quite pleased when Carson Wentz and JJ was hurt because I was assuming that Addison production would go up, and it did for the first few games, and then it's tapered off the past few weeks. So that's something to keep an eye on and monitor. Let's see how they progress over the next few weeks, getting into the thick of the schedule. And as we know now, we are well into November. Weather is going to be a factor. So when you're setting your lineups, you might want to check the forecast, especially for your kickers if they're not done. Uh, so there's a dome. So if you have your kicker, you'll be fine. On the Baltimore side, it's like Mark Andrews is having a resurgence. Lamar back in. Derrick Henry's been quiet, but I believe this is going to be a heavy Derrick Henry game against Minnesota. Minnesota has a very good secondary pass rush, and I believe Baltimore wants to play ball control and keep that defense out of the field as long as they can and tire them out. Just makes sense. The next game, which is basically a bye week game, we have the Cleveland Browns and the New York Jets, right? Early, who just got rid of their best two defenders. With that in mind, is that Cleveland, I don't know if Fannin, I believe he was questionable, but Fannin should be available to play today. And if you have him, I would definitely start him against the Jets. Uh, if you have Jerry Judy, this is the week you probably want to roll him out. This got to be the floor game for Jerry Judy. Uh, I'm calling 100 yards for Jerry Judy. I know Gabriel loves his tight ends and junking. I believe this is a Jerry Judy game. Although it is in New York, it could be windy. It's not a hunch that Jerry Judy comes through with 100 yards for fantasy owners today. Next game, we got the Bucks on their bye week playing with England. This actually is probably, I think, one of the best games today. Um, the two first place teams, New England is coming off with a win, and Tampa Bay is coming off with 5. Baker Mayfield did have his worst game of the season. When you figure the week I really needed it, but that's okay. Baker's still my guy. Let's see, Rachaad White gets another start today. Bucky Irving is still out with injury. My apologies for those who selected Bucky Irving drafts and didn't handcuff him with Rashad White. Again, another smaller back. Definitely somebody you want to handcuff for a very long season. Ibuka should be back healthy. I expect some out of him today. Godwin is still out as well from Irvin. Nah, Godwin's a good guy. He's been serviceable fantasy actually. I think these injuries have taken a toll on him. I'm not quite sure if he has recovered. We may have seen the I mentioned about Day Days. We may have very well seen the best days of Godwin. I mean, this might be it for God. And I know Mike Evans is still on IR. Hamstring and concussion. It wasn't shown. I don't know. He's got a shit ton of injuries. I don't believe we see Mike Evans to probably week 14. Week 14 is what I'm eyeballing for the return of Mike Evans. And then hopefully by then, everyone should be back up in that offense to get cooking. They kind of had a few down weeks. And obviously, with all the injuries to the offense, he was expected. Next game. Now, 3 weeks ago, you probably would have been like, this is the third game of the week. The Saints and the Panthers, but shit. The Panthers have opened eyes. The Panthers are no longer a bye week. The only problem with that team is it's a Russian roulette with the wide receivers. You never know who's going to have a decent game. The only players you want from Carolina are those running backs. Period. You don't need one quarterback. You keep Bryce Young. Just take one of those two running backs. And I believe Dowdle actually should be the starter. Chuba Hubbard needs to be the third down complimentary back. Dowdle is the better back. Clear head and shoulders above the better back. Which makes Dallas look like even more of a buffoon for letting him walk. After he had 1,000 yards, and you let him walk. You had your running back. Anywho, time to get Dallas time when they need because they're on the bye. Next game, we got Jacksonville at Houston. CJ Stroud is out with a concussion. Davis Mills gets the start today. Yeah, Houston on Texas. I don't know. The running back situation is still murky. I don't believe we've had any. I don't believe Houston has had any games with all of their receivers healthy at the same time. That means Christian Kirk, Collins. I don't believe they've played more than a handful of snaps together. And Tank Dell will be the other receiver who still hasn't made an appearance. They have the number 2 defense, I believe. Seattle's number 1 fantasy-wise. So the defense is going to keep them in games. The question is whether their offense can put up enough points to get wins, and clearly they've shown they haven't been able to do that. So Houston has some work to do in the offseason to address their offense. I wouldn't say they need to go draft it back, but they do need to fix their O-line. Stroud's still taking hits, although he's been running more this year than previously, that I've been advising to run more. But something just ain't right with that offense. The play calls are just atrocious. I don't believe their offensive coordinator is in tune with CJ Stroud. So in the offseason, they need to figure some shit out because this is unacceptable. Sorry. Moving on, we got the Cardinals and the Seahawks. So we get to see Rashid Shaheed. We're going to get a new toy today and see how or if this cuts into Jackson Smith and Jacobs' production. Cooper Kupp. Damn it. Cooper Kupp is another receiver, I believe, best days are behind him. And I mentioned this, I believe, on my draft show in August. He's just not the same player. Too many injuries. He was never fast, right? He just ran good routes. But now he's lost a step. You're already not fast, and you lost a step. What does that put you? Here's just another guy. Yeah, he'll have some games where he puts up a few, it might get you 50, 60 yards and 5, 6 catches. But the days of him just destroying destroying defenses. Like the year he had foot pound, the man couldn't be stopped. That is so far gone from now. Let's go off of that. Jacoby Brissett gets to start for the Cardinals today. Um, Kyler Murray is on IR. I believe the Cardinals are going to try to move on from Kyler Murray. I think a group of guys were talking about this a few weeks ago. That Kyler Murray was like in year 7, 8. Like it's time. Like if he was going to do it, he should have done it by now. But I just don't think him and Tua are kind of like the same guy, right? Small stature. Tua doesn't run much. Kyler runs a lot more. But they're kind of like the same guy. Like they'll have monster game and fantasy wise. It's just something that you can't trust. As you know, in fantasy world, you want consistency. And those are two of the most inconsistent quarterbacks there are in the league. And regardless of their offense, regardless of the players around them, they're just inconsistent. So, the jury is still out on that. Something to keep an eye on. If you do need a bye week feeling, I would go and grab Jacoby Brissett if you can. He's a veteran. He's definitely clicked with Maserati Mars. That's Marvin Harrison. They seem to have a pretty good connection. He's had his best games with Brissett. So if he's still available and you need a bye week feeling, I would go and grab Jacoby Brissett. I believe he's going to be the starter moving forward for the Cardinals. And as I said, the Cardinals aren't a bad team. They have a really good defense. And they'll be hanging around in some games. Sorry, I'm fantasy. But anywho, moving on to the next game. It is now 11:30. And I'm going to wrap this up in about another 5 or 10 minutes. So we have the Rams at San Francisco. And we all know how divisional games play out. They're usually competitive. Brock Purdy is going to miss another game, so it's the Mac Jones show once again. I have noticed with Mac Jones at quarterback, George Kittle, his production has fallen off the cliff. I know he came back from injury 2 weeks ago, and he had a bagel. And last week, I believe he only had 2 catches. That's just not enough production. I would go on the limb, but I wouldn't even say it's a strong limb. I would go on the limb and say you might want to bench George Kittle until Brock Purdy is back at quarterback. Mac Jones tends to favor Henry Bourne because they have reported him in days in Lincoln. If you have another tight end, let's say Fan or Rondé Gatson second, I would start them over George Kittle right now until Brock Purdy returns for the 49ers. He's just not going to have that elite production that you would expect from George Kittle. CMC, he's going to do his thing on the other side with the Rams. Stafford has been cooking. But again, this is a divisional game that they're always highly contested. I would not expect the same output that Stafford had last week. He probably would have maybe 200 to 225 yards and a couple touchdowns, but nothing like the last few weeks with Matt Stafford. Moving on, we have the Lions and the Commanders, formerly Tutty, as I mentioned earlier. It should be a blowout. The Lions are going to be kind of ticked after their performance last week. Jameer Gibbs, again, these OC coordinators frustrate the hell out of me. I don't understand how you can't or can refuse to get your best player the ball. I understand the defense has got a job to do, right? But you design plays to get your players open. They do it all the time. You have to find ways to get the ball in your best player's hands. And clearly it's Jameer Gibbs. And for some odd reason, Detroit didn't do that last week, and they paid the price. So let's see if they get their shit together this week and get Gibbs the ball. I'm sure a lot of owners will be pissed off because it probably cost you a win in your weekly matchup. But even Amon-Ra had kind of down game So I don't really know what to make of the Lions. You know, 1 week they look unstoppable, and then the next week, dud. And that's kind of been start of the season. So let's see if they can kind of get some consistency. Because obviously, this is the second half of the season, and they're in a division where teams aren't going anywhere. The Bears won a couple in a row. They're hanging around. Obviously, the Packers, and we don't need to talk about the day they made last week, but I will when we get to the Monday night. Um, but needless to say, Gibbs should have Gibbs should get you about 20 fantasy points today. You heard it here first. 20 fantasy points today for Jameer Gibbs. Sunday night game, we got Pittsburgh at Chargers. Um, the dog, I believe this is starting here. The thing with the Chargers, Herbert led the Chargers in rushing yards last week, and that's not even his game. Although he can do it, that's not really his game. Um, it's not sustainable for him to keep doing that. So I believe the Chargers need to address their running game situation sooner than later. Eventually, it's going to bite them bad. I know McConkey has been getting a lot of targets the last few weeks, as well as Gaston. Keenan Allen has obviously suffered from that. But Herbert is still putting up numbers. If you have him, I'm sure you're smiling ear to ear. And what's helping his numbers is the running yards. Wasn't expecting him to rush for 50 and 60 yards a game. So obviously I'm taking the Chargers in this game. I said I'm picking them, but I'm going to pick this one. Taking the Chargers in this game. Again, the Steelers are kind of a wild card also. You just never know what you're going to get from them offensively. DK will he'll have one or two big catches, but then it's mostly the tight ends. So my suggestion is if you have a Steelers tight end again, you're playing Russian roulette because it's 3 or 4 of them, and you never know which tight end is going to get the target off the touchdown. So proceed with caution. Last game is the Monday night game. We've got the Eagles coming off the bye, going to Lambeau. Play Packers. Packers are fools, though. I'll tell you why. Jordan Love is very, very reckless with the ball. And I understand he's basically replacing the Hall of Fame Aaron Rodgers, who replaced another Hall of Fame Brett Favre. It seems at times that Jordan Love is trying to emulate their game instead of just playing his game. But there were some throws last week that should not have been made. Throwing in the triple coverage, throwing off the back foot. Doesn't like making certain checkdowns. And to add injury to boot, Tucker Kraft is out for the season with a knee injury. So that was one of his top targets. So who picks up the slack? I know a lot of people went to the waiver wire to pick up Musgrave. I mean, yeah, he's the next man up, but he's not Tucker Kraft. Christian Watson, if you're able to scoop him up off the waivers, he's still out there. I believe he picks up some of that slack, although he is a deep threat. The other receivers are just high cold. I know Jake Reed has been out with that collarbone. I expect him back in a couple weeks. At that point, you may only get a couple of good weeks out of Christian Watson until Jake Reed comes back. Once he comes back with Dobbs and Golden, then we back to the same charade that we always had in the package. Who the fuck knows is going to catch the ball? So just give me the running back, Jacobs, which I have in a couple of weeks because he's got the lion's share of the carries. I know Wilson had one big game this year, but there's none of those backs that threaten Jacobs at this point. That is his backfield alone. All right, it is 11:30. Let me go ahead and check that score as I promised to see who actually won. Who actually won that game? Oh my God. And I promised myself I wasn't getting up to watch it. And then what I do, got up and watched the shit. All right, who won that game? Oh, wow. We have overtime, folks. So this game is going to bump right into the noon kickoff game. So if you haven't set your lineup yet, which is kind of good, I did get up early. I already set all my lineups. Yeah, this game's going to overtime. It's 25-25 going into overtime. So this is going to bleed right into the noon kickoff games. So I will leave this stream up for another 10 minutes or so. If you have any start sit questions, just put them in the chat and I will respond either in the chat or live. If I miss it, I do respond to all comments. I will respond to your comments promptly. So I'm going to leave this open for a moment. But again, thanks for joining. This is Dino, the Fantasy Guru. Enjoy week 10, folks.